Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a soldier, not really. You're not the sort who charges over the top with a bayonet between his teeth or gets immortalised in some grainy recruitment poster. No, you're a miner. Or you were, until His Majesty's government decided your knack for choking on coal dust made you the perfect man to dig tunnels beneath France. Now, instead of extracting rock for a pit boss, you'll be carving clay for a general who's never heard your name. You won't fight in open fields or die in glory. You'll crawl on your belly through a shaft the width of your shoulders, in the dark, in the silence, waiting for the ground itself to kill you. Before we descend, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I find it so fascinating to see who's tuning in from around the world. And if you'd like early access to more of these grim history stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You were born with soot in your lungs and a pick in your hand. Not literally, of course, but close enough. In your village, boys learn to swing a pickaxe before they're tall enough to duck properly in a shaft. The colliery's always been there, louder than church bells, more permanent than any school, and more demanding than God. You've spent the better part of your life hunched underground, shoveling out black earth that doesn't want to move. You've measured time by shifts and injuries, not clocks or calendars. There are no uniforms, no medals, no speeches. Just the dull ache in your back and the knowledge that your father did the same until his lungs gave out like a rusted pipe. So when war breaks out, you're not exactly eager. Not because you're a coward, though you'll be called that soon enough, but because you're tired, bone tired, and because you've seen what happens to men who get caught up in promises too big for their boots. But even you can't ignore the posters forever. They're everywhere, on shop windows, nailed to telegraph poles, lining the pub walls. Kitchener with his finger out, demanding your attention. Your country needs you. It's hard not to take that personally when it's staring at you while you're halfway through your pint. The first wave of lads goes early, clerks, farmhands, students in caps. They march off to cheers, bright-eyed and upright, with dreams of cavalry charges and medals pinned to their chests. You stay behind. Someone has to keep the power on and the fires lit. The mines don't dig themselves, and the war needs coal nearly as much as it needs bodies. For a time, being underground is its own kind of exemption. You keep your head down, literally and figuratively, but it doesn't last. The army comes knocking one cold morning in 1915, not with rifles or threats, but with something far more dangerous, flattery. They've started a new kind of unit, they say, one for skilled men, practical men. Men who know how to swing a pick in silence and don't mind tight spaces. You boys live half your lives underground already, the recruiting officer chuckles, like it's the best joke he's ever told. Might as well do it for king and country. You don't laugh, but you also don't say no. They call it the tunnelling companies, part of the Royal Engineers. Not infantry, not artillery, something in between and beneath. Technically, you're a sapper now. It sounds noble, professional even, like you might build a bridge or defuse a bomb with a pair of wire-rimmed spectacles and a pipe in your teeth. In truth, you'll be digging holes in the ground just like before, only this time the holes might explode, collapse, or contain Germans. You sign your name in a drafty hall under the gaze of a portrait of the king. The ink freezes halfway through your surname. The man behind the desk tells you not to worry. He's seen worse signatures. We're not after handwriting, son. We're after grit. You're not sure if that's meant to be comforting, but it gets you a handshake, a stamp, and a voucher for boots. Training is brief. There's no need to teach a miner how to dig, after all. What they do teach you is how to recognise the difference between British timbers and German ones by the sound they make under pressure, how to pack a charge that will collapse a tunnel without killing the men standing nearby, and how to fight in a shaft too narrow to swing a full shovel. The lectures are short, the demonstrations brutal. One instructor tells you the key to surviving underground is learning how not to breathe too much. Everyone laughs. He doesn't. You're assigned a number, a company, and a cap badge shaped like a flaming grenade. It's supposed to represent the Corps of Royal Engineers. You think it looks more like something that would roll under a bunk and kill you in your sleep. Still, it shines nicely, and your mother, when she sees it before you ship out, will pretend that it means something more than danger. The uniform it's pinned to doesn't fit. Too tight in the shoulders, loose in the knees, and already smells like mildew. But it's a uniform, and that matters. It means you're official now. A soldier, a tool of empire. You half expect someone to start reciting poetry. Instead, you're given a canvas bag with your name stenciled on it and told to report to Southampton by dawn. A private hands you a rail ticket, like he's doing you a favour, and says, "Best get some rest. The lads out there'll be glad for a bloke who knows one end of a pick from the other." You don't sleep much, not that night. Not because you're nervous, though you are, but because your body knows what it means to dig, and it's already dreading it. You lie awake thinking about the mine shafts back home, the stink of old sweat and new coal, the sound of stone splitting under iron, the way your lantern casts shadows that stretch like fingers across the walls. You wonder how different it can really be. The next morning you wait on the platform with 50 other men just like you. Dirty boots, crooked backs, the quiet stoicism of people who know what kind of silence exists underground. There's no bravado here, no songs, just the occasional cough and the clink of buckles. The officer in charge reads off names like he's taking attendance at a school no one wants to graduate from. Yours is near the middle. You answer with a nod. As the train pulls away, you watch your town shrink into smoke and frost. No band plays, no one waves. The war has already consumed too many suns to make a fuss over one more. You're not a hero yet. Just another man with a shovel and a ticket to France. You tell yourself it won't be worse than mining. That trenches are shallow. That the army, at least, might feed you more often than the pit boss ever did. But even as you think it, you know it's a lie. Because at least in the mines, the earth didn't hate you back. And in the pits, no one was trying to dig toward you with explosives. You shift in your seat, the scratchy wool of your uniform catching at the back of your neck, and you glance at the man beside you. He's older, face carved like stone, and already asleep. You envy that. You close your eyes and try not to imagine what's waiting beneath the mud. It doesn't work. You dream anyway. Next stop, the front. And far below it, your new home. You arrive at the Western Front in the middle of a rainstorm that seems to have been going on for weeks, maybe months. It's hard to tell. The train ride ends somewhere just shy of a nameable station, and from there, it's a jolting lorry ride through miles of mud and broken roads, past artillery parks and rows of faceless men marching the other way with bandaged limbs and 1,000-yard stares. No one speaks unless it's to curse the road or the rain. When someone finally points out a distant line of shattered trees and says, "That's the front," it's with all the enthusiasm of naming a public latrine. Flanders is flat, grey and wet. You didn't expect much from a war zone, but even so, it's remarkable how little life remains. The trees are splintered into matchsticks, fields churned into soup. The air smells of manure, petrol and something sour you can't identify. The clouds hang low, like the sky itself can't be bothered to lift its head. It's all quiet mostly, but not the kind of quiet that comforts, more the kind that makes your spine itch. Somewhere in the distance, a shell lands with a sound like God slamming a door. You're deposited near what looks like a ditch behind a low ridge. It's hard to tell at first that it's a trench. It just looks like the ground gave up and split open. There's a crude wooden ladder slanting into the earth, and a man with a whistle around his neck, who waves you down without looking up from his cigarette. You climb, boots slipping on the wet rungs, and descend into a world where everything is brown, damp, and far too close. The trench stinks. It's the first thing you notice. Not just mud or wet wool, but the accumulated rot of months. Sweat, shit, blood, stale food, and something meatier you try not to name. The walls weep water. The duckboards squelch beneath your boots. There are rats, of course, fat ones, bold ones. One skitters over your foot and pauses to stare at you, as if assessing your usefulness as a future meal. You try not to take it personally. Men shuffle past with blank expressions, shouldering rifles, tin hats askew. Most don't look at you. The ones who do seem mildly disappointed, as if they'd hoped for someone taller, cleaner, or more dead inside. A few wear badges like yours, Royal Engineers, but most are infantry, here to shoot and be shot at. You nod to a passing Lance Corporal. He doesn't nod back. Your escort, a private who hasn't spoken more than 10 words since the station, grunts something about second company this way, and leads you down a side trench barely wide enough for 2 men to pass. The walls are reinforced with sandbags and broken doors. Overhead, duckboards and sheet metal form a crude roof in places, just enough to suggest someone once tried to make it livable. It hasn't worked. Now and then, you hear the pop, pop, pop of rifles in the distance, sometimes closer. One report cracks overhead, and you instinctively duck, nearly tripping over a line of telephone wire strung ankle-high through the mud. The private doesn't flinch. Sniper, he mutters, likes to aim high. You pass a dugout door with the words, "Death or Glory," scratched into it. The door is hanging by one hinge. You pass a latrine that's just a hole in the duckboards, with a curtain hung half-heartedly on a string. You pass a man who's snoring with his helmet tipped over his eyes, and a rat picking at his bootlaces. You keep walking. The longer you're in the trench, the more surreal it feels. You'd expected war to be loud, perhaps, heroic even. This is neither. This is a wet, endless queue of misery, where men shuffle in slow motion, from one task to another, like figures in a painting left out in the rain. Shell fire comes in distant, irregular bursts, thumps and cracks that echo through the earth more than the air. Once you hear someone scream, but it fades quickly. No one runs to help. You're led through 2 more duckboard corridors and past a rusted cart full of pickaxes before your guide stops outside a dugout, wedged into the trench wall. "This is him," he says, and then leaves without waiting for acknowledgement. Inside it's dim. A single oil lamp flickers on a crate beside a folding map table. The air is thicker here, closer somehow. A man in a muddy greatcoat sits behind the table, scraping something dark from under his fingernails with a penknife. He doesn't look up when you enter. You stand there, unsure whether to speak. After a moment he grunts. "New rat, are you?" You assume that means you. "Yes, sir," you say, though you're not entirely sure he's an officer. His stripes are barely visible under the grime. He finally looks up. His eyes are red-rimmed and yellowed around the edges, like old parchment. He takes you in with a glance and snorts. "Not the worst I've seen. Hope you brought your own boots. The ones they issue don't last a week down there." You nod. You didn't, but it seems safer to pretend. He tosses you a canvas satchel. Ear trumpet, chalk, carbide lamp and a flask. Don't lose any of it. And don't drink the lamp water. Last lad who did hasn't stopped shaking. You glance into the satchel. It smells like grease and damp wool. The flask rattles when you move it. "I'm Sergeant Flanagan. You don't call me sir, you don't salute, and if you hear knocking in the walls, you don't shout. You come get me, or whoever's breathing nearest. That's how we do it. Understood?" You nod again. You're beginning to understand that nodding will take you farther here than questions. He stands, joints creaking audibly. He's shorter than you expected, stocky and wide-shouldered, like a barrel that learned how to walk. He grabs a lantern from a hook, checks it, and jerks his chin toward a tunnel entrance cut into the trench wall behind him. It's barely more than a hole, reinforced with timber and disappearing into blackness. Cold air wafts from it, carrying the scent of wet earth and something metallic. "Come on then," he says. "No point waiting till you're clean and rested. You won't be either again for the duration." You follow him without speaking. He stoops slightly to enter the tunnel, and you do the same, stepping off the trench floor and into something deeper, something older. The sounds of the surface fade almost instantly. No shouting, no rifles, just the low, steady thrum of water and earth shifting overhead. As you walk, bent double in the narrow shaft, your boots sink into clay. The light from his lamp casts your shadows along the walls like elongated ghosts. You duck instinctively, every few paces, even when there's nothing above you. You think about the men up above, infantry crawling through shell fire, bayonets fixed, letters from home tucked into breast pockets. You've seen them in the posters, heard the songs, but none of it seems to matter now. Your war isn't up there. Your war is down here, and it's just begun. You spend barely 20 minutes underground with Sergeant Flanagan that first day, just long enough to feel the pressure change in your ears, to taste the damp clay on your tongue, and to understand that the tunnel is not a place made for living things. You don't dig, you don't speak. He shows you where the listening posts are, points out the timber braces you'll be praying don't give way, and then turns back without ceremony. That night, you sleep in a dugout barely wide enough to turn over in, your head filled with the sound of dripping water and distant boots. No dreams, just the sensation of clay pressing in behind your eyelids. The next morning, you're led back to the shaft. There's no sunlight to mark the hour, only a faint shift in the quality of damp air and the muttering of boots overhead. Sergeant Flanagan thrusts a thumb toward the tunnel mouth and says, "You're with Doyle today. Try not to make him kill you." Then he disappears into the trench line, leaving you blinking into the dark. Doyle is waiting just inside the entrance, crouched on an overturned crate and sucking on the stem of an unlit pipe. He doesn't look up as you approach. You pause, unsure if introductions are expected. Before you can speak, he grunts, "Hope you ate." You'll not be seeing food or light for a while. You tell him your name. He doesn't offer his in return. Instead, he grabs a burlap sack of tools, slings it over one shoulder, and begins crawling forward into the tunnel without another word. You follow because there's no alternative. Within 10 paces, the light from the entrance disappears entirely, and your world shrinks to the space between your back and the ceiling. The shaft isn't tall enough to stand in. In places, it isn't tall enough to kneel. You quickly learn the difference between crawling and worming. Doyle moves with the smooth, practiced rhythm of someone who's been doing this too long to care how unnatural it is. His boots disappear around a bend, and you're left staring at mud walls just inches from your face, trying not to think about how much earth is above your head, or what would happen if it suddenly came down. The walls are slick and close, reinforced here and there with timber beams that groan with unsettling frequency. Your breath fogs in the cold, stale air, and within minutes your hands are coated in damp clay that smells like old water and copper. You scrape your shoulder on a splintered board and nearly curse aloud, but catch yourself just in time. Doyle glances back, eyes narrowed. You close your mouth. Eventually, the shaft widens enough for you to squat beside him. He gestures for you to hand him the hand auger from the sack, and you do, unsure of what comes next. He jams it into the clay wall in front of you and begins twisting it slowly, listening. After a few turns, he stops, places his ear to the shaft wall, and goes still. You do the same, though you're not sure what you're meant to hear. After a long silence, he mutters, "Nothing yet." Good. Means we're still alone. You nod, as if you understand. You don't. He begins to dig in earnest, using only a pick and a short-handled shovel. There's no room for anything larger. The tools barely make a sound, just soft scraping and the occasional dull clunk as iron meets stone. You watch, waiting for instruction. Eventually, he tosses you the shovel and says, "Shift what I pull," quiet-like. No scraping the walls, no clanging the pick. Sound travels underground, louder than you'd think, louder than you want. You get to work scooping loose clay, into a canvas bag with the slow, awkward rhythm of someone trying not to make a fool of themselves. It's hard. Not the weight, though it's heavier than expected, but the control. You're used to swinging a full pick, working fast, breathing hard. Here, speed is death. Everything has to be done slowly, quietly, in a space not much wider than a coffin. It doesn't take long for the air to go bad. The shaft breathes poorly, and the further in you go, the more the air stagnates. Your breath comes back at you hot and damp. Your shirt clings to your back. Your scalp begins to itch. You try shifting to breathe through your mouth, but the taste makes you gag. Clay, mould, old sweat, and something faintly metallic. Doyle hears you retch and says, "Don't do that. You'll suck in the dust." You force your mouth shut and try to breathe through your nose, shallow and slow. He tells you about a man who once coughed while working this close to the line. The sound carried. Germans heard. They dug faster, came through the wall with knives. "We buried what was left," he adds, almost conversationally. "Mostly boots." You try not to picture it. The tunnel creaks overhead. Every few minutes something shifts in the distance. Earth settling, beams warping, maybe rats. You freeze each time, breath held, half expecting the roof to come down or a German bayonet to burst through the wall. Doyle doesn't flinch, he just keeps digging. Time melts in the dark. There are no hours down here, only the length of breath and muscle fatigue. You shovel until your arms ache, then shovel some more. The lamp dims, flickers, comes back. The clay never ends. Doyle doesn't speak unless necessary. When he does, it's always in a whisper. You start to mimic him, not by choice, but by instinct. Loud sounds feel obscene here, dangerous, like shouting in a graveyard. He shows you how to wedge a timber support without splitting it, how to tamp down a collapsing edge, how to tell if a tunnel is shifting by watching the dust drift in your lamplight. You feel it before you hear it, he says. Feel it in your teeth, like chewing gravel. At one point, you think you hear a faint tapping far off in the clay. You freeze. So does Doyle. You both press your ears to the wall. Nothing now. He listens longer, then says, "Tree roots, maybe." Or they're listening back. He shrugs. Either way, nothing to be done. Keep digging. You do. By the time you're told to withdraw, your knees have gone numb and your fingers won't uncurl. You shuffle backward through the shaft like a crab, dragging the tool sack behind you, your whole body aching with effort and strain. Doyle moves ahead without comment, his silhouette bobbing in the faint glow of the lamp like a ghost on a leash. You emerge into the trench like a corpse rising from a grave. The air feels foreign, too bright, too loud. Even the grey sky stings your eyes. Your ears ring from the pressure change. Your hands shake as you unclip the lantern and hand it over. Someone offers you tea, but you can't hold the mug steady enough to drink it. You lean against the trench wall, light-headed, sweat-soaked, and covered in grime. You didn't strike a vein of clay. You didn't hit enemy ground. You didn't lay charges or fight with a pick. And yet, your whole body feels like it's been wrung out and nailed to a post. Doyle sits beside you and lights his pipe, finally. The smoke smells like peat and old books. He glances your way and says, "Not bad for a first dig." You didn't scream anyway. That's more than I can say for some. Then he closes his eyes and leans back like a man napping between train stops. You don't respond. You're still trying to remember how to breathe like a human being again. Your second full day underground is the first one that counts. Doyle doesn't waste time with more warnings. He points to a section of tunnel wall just ahead of the timber frame and says, "There, scrape it clean, slow and steady. If you hear anything that doesn't sound like us, stop." Then he drops to one knee and begins sorting tools from the sack with the methodical quiet of a man rolling a cigarette during a funeral. You take your place beside him, crouched low and already sweating. The air down here doesn't move, not really. It just thickens with the stink of bodies, stale breath, and wet earth. You press your hand to the wall, fingers sinking slightly into the clay, and begin to dig. Not like a miner. There's no swinging, no force. You scrape, slice, scoop. The goal is to feel your way forward, not rush through it. Every strike risks collapse. Every sound could betray your position to a German team listening on the other side of 100 feet of soil. Doyle had said it yesterday with that flat voice of his. They're digging toward us just like we're digging toward them. Don't give them a reason to know where you are. So you keep the pick low and quiet, tapping at the clay until it flakes loose, then sliding it gently into a sack. It's not hard work in the sense of weight. It's the repetition, the stillness, the unnatural slowness of it all. You dig in silence for what feels like hours, your world reduced to a 3-foot stretch of mud, your knees pressed into slick earth, your back locked in a constant hunch. Every so often, Doyle reaches past you to tamp a support beam or wedge a brace into the wall behind. He never speaks unless it's necessary. You appreciate that more than you expected. The lamp casts flickering shadows along the shaft, stretching every movement into something monstrous. Your breath fogs briefly each time you exhale, clinging to the stale air and mingling with the scent of mould and sweat. You learn quickly not to breathe too deeply. The tunnel has its own smell, and it doesn't welcome yours. Soon, you can't tell where your body ends and the tunnel begins. You smell like mud, taste copper, and feel grit between your teeth, even though you haven't eaten since before dawn. You sweat through your uniform. The wool clings to your back, your thighs, the insides of your elbows. Your fingers blister inside the leather gloves, and when you finally peel them off for a moment's rest, your palms are pale and wrinkled, like they've been soaking in something foul. You dry them on your trouser leg, then reach for the shovel again. Doyle grunts softly. You take it as approval. There's a rhythm to it, eventually. Dig, pause, listen, shift the bag, check the supports, dig again. You start to lose the awareness of time entirely. There are no clocks, no changes in light. Only the steady drip of water somewhere behind you, and the occasional creak of timber groaning under pressure. You imagine the whole tunnel as a lung, expanding and contracting around you, waiting for a reason to exhale and crush you flat. Doyle breaks the silence after a few hours by handing you a dented flask. You take a sip, expecting water. It's gin, harsh, cheap and warm. You hand it back without a word, and he nods once before stowing it away again. Then it's back to digging. Now and then the wall shifts, not visibly, but you feel it. A tremor in the wrist, a shift in the resistance. Doyle places his hand flat against the clay and listens. You do the same. Sometimes it's just a settling, harmless. Other times, he'll call for a brace and spend 10 minutes reinforcing a patch no bigger than your chest. It's the closest thing to prayer you see down here. When the shift ends, though no one says it out loud, you both begin the crawl back. Your knees protest. Your spine feels twisted, like your bones have been carved into the shape of the shaft. You drag the tool bag with one arm and brace yourself with the other, inch by inch. There's no turning around. The tunnel doesn't allow it, so you backtrack like a dog crawling out from under a collapsed barn. You emerge into the trench blinking and nauseous. The fresh air feels sharp, almost hostile. It's raining again, or maybe it never stopped. The mud is ankle deep in places, and the boards float if you step wrong. You pass a soldier puking quietly into a latrine hole and another smoking a damp cigarette while rain soaks his greatcoat. No one makes eye contact. No one says welcome back. You make your way to the dugout by instinct alone. Your hands are numb. Your eyelids itch. You strip your coat off in the dark and hang it from a nail already bowed under the weight of other men's gear. Your bunk is a board laid over 2 crates. It smells of mildew, tobacco, and skin. You lie down slowly, carefully, as if the motion, might wake something buried inside you. The quiet is different here. Not like the tunnel, where silence means listening, tension, waiting. This silence is soft, heavy, indifferent. You stare at the wooden beams above you and try to remember what it felt like to stand upright. Your legs throb with exhaustion. Your arms feel detached. Your jaw aches from clenching. You try to sleep. You close your eyes and listen to the creak of boots overhead, the slow drip of water from the ceiling, the breath of the man snoring in the bunk to your left. But your mind won't settle. It keeps reaching back into the tunnel, back into the clay. You can still feel it pressing against your skin. You can still taste the soil in your mouth. You don't know how long you lie there. An hour. 10. Time folds in on itself, like damp paper. Eventually you drift off, not into sleep exactly, but into something heavier. A dull, sweat-soaked stillness that might pass for rest if you squint. You dream of crawling, of walls that breathe, of darkness that whispers. When you jolt awake, you don't know where you are. It takes a full minute before you realise you're above ground. At least you think you are. You're assigned to a listening post 3 days later, though no one actually says it like that. The sergeant just grunts and gestures toward a side shaft, muttering, "They need ears. Take your lamp and go with Harper." That's all the briefing you get. Harper is already waiting at the mouth of the tunnel, arms crossed, face unreadable beneath the soot and stubble. He doesn't say hello, just turns and starts crawling. You follow, because that's what you do here. No one explains things. They just expect you to do them quietly and not die. The shaft is tighter than usual, more compact, less reinforced. It hasn't been widened for traffic, just scraped just wide enough for one man to lie flat. Barely able to move, it's a blind tunnel, not meant for digging forward, just for listening. Harper slithers ahead, like he was born in a burrow, dragging a coil of line behind him. You carry the gear, a shallow metal dish shaped like an ear trumpet, a pair of headphones, and a stub of chalk to mark what matters. When he finally stops, it's in a chamber barely long enough for the two of you to lie side by side. You exhale hard and settle in beside him, chest pressed to the floor, one cheek against the clay. It's wet, of course it is. Harper takes the dish from you and plants it gently against the tunnel wall. Then he hands you the headphones and points. You slip them on. No one speaks. There's no need to. Down here, everything that matters happens beneath the surface. At first, you hear nothing. Not silence exactly. More like the absence of anything human. There's a low hum, a faint rumble from the artillery far above, and the occasional squelch of water shifting in unseen crevices. But no voices, no picks, no boots, just the dull breathing of earth being earth. You almost relax. Almost. Harper shifts beside you and leans his head to the wall, fingers twitching slightly, as if trying to feel the vibrations before they become sound. After a while, he whispers, barely audible, "They're close on this side. Been scratching for days now. Sergeant wants to know if they've moved." You nod, though he can't see it, and keep listening. Time passes oddly in a listening post. You don't sleep. You don't speak. You hardly move. Every small sound is magnified into significance. The creak of your boot leather, the rattle of your own breath, the thump of your heart beating too loud in your ears. All of it becomes suspect. You try to slow your breathing, pressing your ribs into the floor to muffle the rise and fall. It doesn't work. The more you focus on silence, the more you realize how loud your body is. Eventually, something shifts in the clay. A faint tap, like metal nudging stone. You freeze. Harper does too. You both listen. It comes again. Then a pause, then again. Slightly sharper this time. Like someone adjusting a tool. It's methodical, measured, not natural, not roots, not water, not settling. Human. Harper leans close and speaks so softly, you barely catch it. That's them. They're probing, seeing if we're here. You nod again, hand gripping the chalk in your palm, like a weapon. You make a mark on the wall, 2 short lines, and then reach for the wire. The signal is sent back to the forward dugout. Suspected enemy, dig detected, at listening post 4B. It's the most useful thing you've done all week. For the next hour, you do nothing but lie still. You wait to hear it again. The tapping continues, on and off, always in the same rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, scrape, pause. You realise they're using hand tools just like yours, probably with the same slow patience, the same sweat dripping into their sleeves, the same ache in their joints. Somewhere, maybe 15 feet of dirt away, there's a German sapper doing exactly what you're doing. And if you hear him, he might hear you. The thought clenches something deep in your gut. You try to slow your breathing again. The noise stops abruptly. You and Harper both hold your breath. Nothing. The silence swells. You check the wire. It's intact. No response yet from the sergeant. You press your ear back to the dirt, waiting for another tap, another scrape, another mistake. Instead, there's a faint rustle. Then a different kind of noise, like a whisper of cloth, a shifting of boots. Not movement in the tunnel, movement in the earth. You glance at Harper. His jaw is tight. They're digging fast now, he whispers. Trying to get close. Might be laying charges? The blood drains from your fingers. You listen harder. You try to judge the direction. It's impossible. The vibrations are tricksters, bouncing off wet clay, softening against supports, bleeding into the timber. One moment it sounds close enough to touch, the next it might be 20 yards off. But Harper doesn't seem confused. He's done this before. His expression hasn't changed. He's already cataloguing what to do next. If they hit one of our shafts, he murmurs, we'll hear it. Then we crawl fast, or we don't crawl at all. You don't respond. You don't trust your voice. Instead, you mark the wall again and tap twice on the wire. Priority alert. The Germans are too close. Another sound. This one sharper. A knock that vibrates through your jaw. Then a pause. Then, was that breathing? You almost convince yourself it was nothing. But Harper lifts one hand and nods. Don't panic, he says. They're just listening, like us. You stare at the wall. You imagine the German face pressed against the other side, ear cocked, trying to pick up the rustle of your shift, the hitch in your breath, the creak of a brace giving way. You wonder if he's young, or old, if he smokes, if he's thinking the same thing. You wonder who'll dig faster, who'll get the charge packed first, who'll be left to fill the hole. A bead of sweat slides down your cheek and vanishes into the clay. The noise stops again. Harper eases away from the wall and sits back slightly, stretching one arm until the joint pops. That's enough for now, he says, voice dry. We've marked it. If they're close enough to hear, they're close enough to kill. Someone will decide whether to mine them or wait for the collapse. You slowly pull the headphones off, your ears ringing in the absence of pressure. The world feels too loud, even though it's barely above a murmur. You stretch your legs and feel them tingle with pins and needles. You've been lying there for 5 hours. You thought it was 1. Harper doesn't move to leave just yet. He lights a cigarette, careful to cup the flame. The smoke curls against the roof of the shaft and vanishes. You'll dream of it, he says eventually. The tapping happens to all of us. You'll be back in your bunk and it'll start again in your skull. Tap, tap, then nothing. You glance at the wall, half expecting it to move. He exhales and shrugs. It's not roots, by the way. That noise you heard earlier? That was a boot. You say nothing. You just nod. And then you mark it down. The next day starts like the others, grey, wet, and barely distinguishable from night. You spend the morning hauling spoil from a side shaft that smells like boiled meat and lamp oil, and by midday, you're back on shift with Doyle, deeper into a forward tunnel the Germans haven't found yet, or haven't bothered with. No listening this time, just digging. The kind of work that makes your knuckles swell and your brain go soft. You welcome the monotony. After yesterday's hours lying motionless with Harper, waiting for boots to scrape through the clay. Even the dull rhythm of pick and shovel feels almost safe. Almost. Because nothing down here stays still for long. The collapse doesn't begin with a bang. It starts with a whisper. You're crawling backward with a bag of spoil strapped across your shoulders when you feel it. A low, unfamiliar tremor in the clay. Not the usual creak of timber. Not the subtle flecks of wet soil adjusting to pressure. This is deeper, heavier. It moves through your spine like a second heartbeat, and for a second you think you imagined it, until the air itself seems to tighten. Then the ceiling exhales, a groan long and low, like something ancient being bent the wrong way. You freeze. So does the man ahead of you. Doyle's silhouette goes still, his arm half raised in warning. His eyes shift upward, then down. Then, without speaking, he yanks the lamp from the support and tosses it behind him toward the nearest junction. "Move," he says. You don't need telling twice. You start scrambling. There's no grace in it. The packed tunnel forces you to crawl on elbows and knees, dragging the bag with one arm while trying not to slip on the boards, slick with clay and condensation. Behind you, the shuddering comes again, louder this time and unmistakable. Something is giving. The earth is about to take itself back. The first timbers snap with a sound like breaking ribs. One, then two more in rapid succession. You look back, mistake. A cloud of dust erupts from the darkness, swallowing the light. You choke, stumble, and keep moving. Your helmet scrapes the ceiling as you duck lower. Every inch is harder than the last. You try not to think about how far you are from the surface. Then the tunnel behind you disappears. You don't see it go, you feel it. A rush of wind, then suction, then impact. Something slams into your legs. Your boots are yanked backward as the floor buckles beneath you. You lurch forward, clawing for the wall, but there's nothing solid left to grip. The world goes sideways. Clay fills your mouth before you have a chance to scream. You hit the wall hard. Your shoulder takes the brunt. You think you hear it pop, but you're already sliding, tumbling through the black, arms flailing in a space that suddenly doesn't have a floor. The sound is the worst part. Dull, muffled, endless. Not like rockfall in the mines. This is wet earth. It doesn't clatter, it swallows. One moment you're underground. The next, you're inside the ground. You land twisted, chest down, head turned sideways against something unyielding. Your right arm is pinned. You try to move it. You can't. The pressure across your back is immense. Like a slab has been laid on top of you. You can breathe, but only barely. Each inhale is a thin, wet gasp through a mouthful of dust and blood. The air tastes like iron and decay. It's pitch black. The lamp is gone. The noise is gone. Even your own breath is barely audible above the weight pressing down on your ribs. You try to call out, but your voice doesn't carry. The dirt muffles everything. You start to panic. Your body wants to thrash, to claw upward, to dig your way out, but there's nowhere to go. The silence becomes unbearable. You listen for movement, shovels, voices, anything, but there's nothing. Just the shifting weight of the tunnel settling into itself, locking you in. You think of the diagrams they showed you on the first day. How to support a shaft, where to brace, how much air a man might have in a void the size of a coffin. At the time, it seemed theoretical. Now it's your only calculation. You can't feel your legs, not at first. Then you can, sharp pain in the knee, a deep throb in your thigh, where something heavy has pinned it sideways. You try to shift your hips and nearly black out. The pain is dizzying. You vomit bile into the clay. It soaks in immediately, like the earth is drinking you. Time disappears. You might be there for 5 minutes or 30. It stretches, breaks, reforms. Your mind starts to slip. You think of home. Not clearly, just flickers. A kettle, a shovel left by the door, the sound of coal being poured from a scuttle into the stove. You try to focus on those things to stay awake, but they drift away faster than you can hold them. Eventually, you hear something. Dull thumps, not the enemy, not the tunnel falling in. These are deliberate, controlled. You hold your breath. You listen harder. There, again, a spade, close. You try to shout, but your throat is raw and your voice barely escapes. You bang your head against the beam near your temple instead. Once, twice, then you hear a response, a sharper knock. 3 quick strikes, a signal. You cry, not loudly, not even visibly, just a slow leak of tears into the dust around your eyes. You're still here, and someone else knows it. Minutes later, maybe more, a sliver of light pierces the dark. Then a second. Then the faint glint of a pick, chipping away above your head. The light stings. You squint into it, raising your free hand as best you can. A shape leans over you. It's Doyle. His face is streaked with dirt and blood. He doesn't smile. He doesn't speak. He just reaches down and begins pulling clay away from your shoulders, bit by bit. It takes 2 more men and 20 minutes to free your chest. Another 10 before your legs are clear. You don't feel the moment they lift you, only the rush of air as the pressure finally releases and your lungs expand past panic. You cough once, then again, violently, dirt spewing from your throat like you've been swallowing the tunnel itself. They drag you out through a fresh cut they've made in the side of the shaft. The surface is further than it should be. Your vision blurs. You smell cordite, then sweat, then something coppery. When they lay you down on the trench boards, you blink up at the grey sky and realise it's still raining. Of course it is. There's blood on your boots, a lot of it. You don't know whose. Doyle's voice reaches you, muffled through the pounding in your ears. "We lost Green. Shaft gave way right over his head." Someone else mutters a curse. Another says, "Nothing to be done." They move on. The work doesn't stop. You lie still, the cold seeping into your bones, and try to take in the fact that you're alive. Sort of. Your shoulder hurts. Your leg might be broken. Your mouth is full of grit and someone else's screams still echo in your skull. But you're breathing. The tunnel doesn't care, it never did. You're assigned to the low tunnel the day after the collapse. No explanation, no sympathy. Just a name on a slate and a nod from the quartermaster. Your leg, not broken after all, still aches, and your shoulder doesn't sit right when you stretch. But you're told it's time to pull your weight again. Flanagan points toward the sump shaft and mutters, "Bring extra socks. If you've got any skin left by the end of it, you'll be lucky." The tunnel lies near the water table, so close you can feel the moisture in the air before you even crawl inside. The earth down here is different, slick, sour and alive in ways it shouldn't be. Every step sinks slightly. The boards groan like old men. The walls aren't clay, not really. They're something softer, pliable. They slump if you lean too hard. The timbers rot from the inside out, slick with black mildew that weeps when you touch it. You wear gloves, but it gets through anyway. The air smells worse than usual. You've grown used to mould and sweat, the metallic tang of old blood and bad breath. But this is different. It's heavier, rancid with decay and something chemical. You try breathing through your mouth at first, but the taste is worse than the stench. Sulphur, sewage, and that telltale trace of rot that means something nearby used to be alive and isn't anymore. You spend your shift dragging buckets of silt through the narrow shaft, hunched double, knees soaked and spine twisted into knots. The water here isn't clear. It's brownish grey, like something wrung from an old bandage. It doesn't pool, it creeps. You watch it ooze along the floorboards, crawling over your boots and soaking into your socks, no matter how tight you've bound the seams. Within an hour, your feet are pulping. Within 2, your skin starts to sting. There are rats, of course. You'd stop noticing them above ground, but here they're bold. They scurry past your knees in packs, slick with filth, their eyes dull and wet. One dies beside you mid-shift, just drops, twitches and stops. You poke it with your shovel, and it shudders once more. The others descend on it within seconds. You don't watch the rest. At one point, you dig your pick into what you think is a firm, patch of earth and hit something soft, not soil, not stone, something that gives. You freeze. The light from your lamp flickers. Doyle's not with you today. It's Turner now, a quieter man with a cough like torn cloth. He sees your expression and sighs. Keep going. If it's a body, best to let it lie. They're not ours. Ours don't make it this far. You scrape gently until the shape reveals itself. Sleeve, buttons, half a jawbone. French uniform? Half a decade old, maybe more. You leave it untouched. By the time you return for the next shift, the rats will have taken what's left. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. Pockets of gas form in the flooded chambers, silent killers you can't see. Sometimes it's methane, sometimes worse. The corporal explains that if your lamp flares and dies, you're to crawl out without breathing and pray it hasn't already filled your lungs. That's the full training. No mask, no procedure, just prayer and retreat. It happens twice that week. One man makes it, one doesn't. You never find his lamp. The tunnel walls start to close in after a few hours. Not literally, but in your head. The air feels thicker, heavier. Your breath fogs and hangs like a curtain. You start to hallucinate motion at the edge of your vision. Shapes just beyond the light, faces in the walls. At first you shake it off. Blame fatigue, foul air, nerves. But then Turner asks if you saw the hands, and you don't answer. Because you did. Or you think you did. And it's better not to speak of such things aloud. Your boots disintegrate by day 4. The leather splits. The laces give. The soles separate in layers like wet paper. You try wrapping your feet in cloth. Then oilskin. Then spare sandbags. Nothing works. The rot gets in. Your toes go pale, then red, then begin to blister. Flanagan calls it trench foot. Though down here, the term feels inadequate. It's not just the trench, it's the water, the weight, the constant pressure. Your skin is starting to forget how to be skin. One morning, you wake in your dugout to find your toenail has come off in your sock. No pain. Just a slick smear and the faint smell of infection. You wash your foot with a rag dipped in iodine, grit your teeth, and wrap it again. The medic shrugs when he sees it. Still walking, he says. Let us know when you can't. You dig beside the same half-buried corpse for 3 days. No one moves it. It's in the way, but not badly enough to justify the effort. Its arm lies just under the boards, preserved by the cold mud, fingers curled around nothing. You accidentally brush it once while shifting position. It's firm, still wearing a glove. The filth becomes biblical. Maggots bubble up from standing puddles that haven't moved in weeks. Flies appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. The walls begin to sweat something black, and you stop trying to identify it. There's nothing clean down here, nothing dry. Even your thoughts feel sodden. On your final day in that tunnel, the roof weeps steadily. The timbers groan like a tired animal. You work in silence. No one speaks anymore. Turner coughs blood into a rag and keeps digging. You don't ask if he's all right. You already know he isn't. The air turns suddenly sharp, full of ammonia and bile. You gag and stumble backward. Gas pocket. Not explosive, just vile. It clings to your clothes, your teeth, your tongue. You try to breathe through your sleeve and end up inhaling whatever lives in the fabric. You taste mould and rot and something that might once have been meat. You start crawling. Not orderly, not calm, just a slow motion scramble toward light, toward motion, toward anything that isn't the tunnel. Turner shouts something behind you, but you don't catch it. You're already halfway up the slope by the time your eyes start to sting. You emerge from the shaft on hands and knees, gasping. The trench is slick with rain again. You press one hand to the boards, try to stand, then collapse forward and vomit into the mud. It comes out in slow, sour waves. You heave until your ribs cramp. You wipe your mouth with the back of your sleeve. It smells like the tunnel. Everything smells like the tunnel now. A few days pass. You've been rotated off water duty and put on wiring detail. They hand you the charge mid-afternoon and tell you to wire it carefully. Not because of protocol, not out of concern for safety, but because the last fellow did it wrong and took 3 others with him. The corporal doesn't say it as a warning exactly, more like a statement of inventory loss. You nod and accept the coil of detonation wire like it's any other tool, even though your fingers are still raw from yesterday's waterlogged shift. He tells you it's a camouflet, defensive, not offensive, a blast meant to collapse a tunnel rather than kill directly. A precaution, nothing personal, just dirt management. The tunnel they've marked is narrow and damp, recently carved, the walls still slick with fresh clay and not yet timbered. The idea is to stop a suspected German approach before it breaks the surface, or breaks into your own galleries. Intelligence isn't certain, it never is. But better safe than overrun, someone mutters. You think it's Doyle, or maybe Harper? It's hard to tell in the gloom. You go down with a 2-man team, Vickers and Brand. Both sappers, both quiet. Vickers looks too young to shave. Brand looks too old to still be here. Neither speaks much. The 3 of you crawl past 2 support chambers, through a shaft so narrow you have to turn your shoulders sideways to breathe comfortably. The air smells of charred cloth and damp rope. Somewhere behind you, the earth shifts. You try not to notice. The charge itself is modest. 2 sandbags worth of explosives, carefully tamped into a notch, dug at the base of the shaft. You wedge the bags into place and press the firing cap into the centre. Your hands shake only slightly. You've done this before, but never when the soil felt so loose, the air so charged. Vickers unwinds the wire as you backtrack, laying it along the floorboards like a fuse in a powder trail. You keep glancing back as though the explosive might detonate from looking at it wrong. Brand handles the final connections. He wipes his nose on his sleeve and mutters something under his breath. You don't ask what. You don't want to know if it was prayer or just a curse. The plan is simple. Light the fuse, clear the shaft, and detonate when the team confirms no friendlies are near. You're to return to the dugout and await instructions. Vickers and Brand are staying behind to finish bracing the support beams around the chamber. Standard procedure, they say, though it seems unnecessary for a shaft about to be intentionally collapsed. You crawl back alone. The silence seems more complete now, as though the shaft has already decided to bury itself and is simply waiting for permission. At the junction, you unclip your lamp and make your way up to the trench, boots squelching in the soft muck. The sky's low and grey, the wind full of grit. Flanagan waves you over to the signal box. "Ready?" he asks, not looking up from his notes. You give a nod. He marks the time, checks his watch, then hands you the detonator. It clicks when you press it. A dry little snap, like breaking a stick. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the ground groans. Not a bang, not right away. First, it's pressure, pure and invisible. The earth draws in its breath. The trench boards vibrate beneath your boots. Then the explosion hits. Not with a flash, but with a tearing roar so deep it feels like it comes from beneath your ribs. The ground lifts slightly, as though the world itself is shrugging. Then it slams down again with a sound like thunder buried in wet blankets. You stagger back, ears ringing. The detonation shakes the trench walls. A fine mist of dirt rains from above. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs nervously. You don't. You just wait. After 10 minutes, you're told to return and inspect the shaft. The dust has settled. No tremors follow. The theory is that the tunnel collapsed as planned. You clip your lamp back on and head down, retracing your crawl with a reluctant knees and a throat gone dry. You don't find the shaft. You find a crater. The support chamber is gone. No trace of timbers, tools, or men. The clay has folded inward, a massive pocket of churned mud and shattered rock where the floor used to be. The bracing beams have splintered like toothpicks. The charge worked, if that's the word for it. Too well, maybe. The explosion must have triggered a deeper pocket, unmapped, unreinforced. A void beneath a void. You look for anything. A boot, a sleeve, a glove, nothing. You call out once, then again, The tunnel absorbs your voice like a sponge. There's no smoke, no fire, just steam rising from the cracked clay and the faint smell of scorched wool. You shine your lamp in every direction, but there's nowhere for the light to land. The crater isn't even a clean hole. It's torn, an ugly wound in the ground that can't be stitched. You crouch at the edge for a long moment, unsure what to feel. Then you stand and turn and crawl out. Back in the trench, Flanagan asks what you saw. You say, "Nothing." He nods. That's the report. The men aren't listed as dead, not yet. Without bodies, they're just missing. The paperwork will take days, maybe weeks. In the meantime, 2 new sappers are already en route to replace them. You're handed a shovel and told to help reinforce the next shaft down the line. No one asks if you knew them well. No one brings their names up again. The hole is marked with a chalk X, nothing more. You lie in your bunk with your boots still on. You've stopped bothering to untie them. They're too caked in dried clay to come off easily, and your toes are blistered in ways that make pulling them free more trouble than it's worth. The soles are starting to peel at the edges. You think about asking for a new pair, but then remember Vickers never got his, and he's somewhere beneath a collapsed shaft now. So you decide not to complain. You picture the last thing Vickers might have seen. A fuse tip glowing, a pocket of air collapsing, the light from your lamp just around the bend, too far to help. Your hands still smell like the detonator, not the explosives, those are long gone, but the coppery stink of wire and sweat, of fear soaked into canvas. You scrubbed your nails with a bristle brush and water gone brown with use, but the dirt won't come out. It's under the skin now. You press your fingers into your palms and feel grit still lodged in the cracks. You're not sure it will ever leave. Sleep should come. Your body wants it badly. Every muscle is heavy, and your eyelids droop against your will. But your mind won't shut off. It hums like a lamp left on too long. Hot, trembling, slightly off. You lie flat on the bunk, staring at the ceiling, and wait. But nothing happens. The dark around you isn't peace, it's pressure. You feel the weight of the tunnel, even when you're not in it. Around you, the dugout is filled with breathing. Wet, uneven, wheezing breaths from other men stacked like cordwood. One coughs every few minutes. One mutters to himself in his sleep. Soft nonsense that starts and stops like a skipping record. Someone else snores like he's drowning. You try not to listen, but there's nothing else to hear. The silence between sounds is too sharp, and the human noises too grim. You used to find comfort in being close to others. Now it just makes you aware that none of you are sleeping properly. When you do finally drift off, it isn't sleep, it's something else. A plunge, a fall. You dream of tunnels that twist back into themselves, of shafts that open into mouths, of boots that sink deeper with every step until your legs disappear, and you wake gasping. You dream of dirt pouring through your fingers like water, of the sound of distant tapping that grows louder even when you press your hands over your ears. You wake 3 times in the same hour, once with your jaw clenched so tightly your teeth ache, once with your fists balled up around a belt strap, and once because you were sure, absolutely sure, that someone whispered your name from the corner of the dugout. You sit up, heart pounding, and stare into the dark, waiting for movement. Nothing comes, no one else stirs. By the 3rd day without real sleep, your thoughts stop lining up. You forget the name of a man you've been working beside for weeks. You walk into a dugout and forget why. You pack your kit twice for the same shift and leave without it anyway. Flanagan doesn't comment, just points you toward the shaft and tells you not to fall asleep down there. You laugh, but it comes out too loud. The other men don't join in. You start to hear things. Not voices, not at first, just the creak of timbers that never move, the drip of water where there are no leaks. You stop and listen, thinking you've heard the scrape of boots behind you, the jingle of a tool belt. But when you turn, there's nothing there. You check your lamp for shadows. Nothing. The tunnel is still, but the air isn't. The air hums. Other men hear things too. They won't admit it outright, but you can see it in their eyes. Doyle's hands tremble sometimes when he tightens his belt. Turner whispers to himself between swings of the shovel. Harper keeps glancing at the wall like he expects it to breathe. No one mentions it. No one wants to say the tunnel's getting to them, but it is. One man, Sims, a sapper from Glasgow, has a breakdown mid-shift. No warning, no injury. Just drops his tools, presses himself flat against the wall, and starts sobbing. Not screaming, not shouting, just quiet, endless sobbing like something inside him cracked in a place too deep to mend. Doyle has to carry him out by the belt. When he's finally dragged into the open air, his fingers are locked into fists, nails drawn into his palms, so hard they've broken the skin. The next day, his bunk is filled by a man named Carter. No one says Sim's name again. You begin to dread sleep. Not just the dreams, but the act itself. The vulnerability of it. The surrender. Each time you close your eyes, it takes longer to come back. You wake with dirt in your mouth, with your arms twisted beneath you, like you were trying to tunnel through the floorboards in your sleep. Once you wake on the ground beside your bunk, face down, cheek pressed into the mud. You don't remember falling. No one saw. You try staying awake through one of your rest shifts, just to test your limits. You pace the trench until your legs give out, then sit on a crate and count rats. You count 32 before your vision blurs and they start to look like men. One of them stops and stares at you too long. You blink and it's gone. That night, you sleep harder than ever and wake to find you've wet yourself. You clean up before anyone notices, or maybe they notice and say nothing. Either way, the silence is the same. When your next shift comes, you're already awake. You never really stopped being. You pack your kit with fingers that tremble slightly, lace your boots with practiced care, and step into the shaft before Flanagan can say your name. Doyle nods at you in the tunnel. He doesn't say anything, but his eyes linger for a second longer than usual. You crouch into position and feel your heartbeat echo off the wall. It's loud. Too loud. You wonder if the enemy can hear it. You wonder if the dirt can. You wonder if you'll hear it stop when the ceiling finally gives in. By the time you lift your shovel, your palms are already sweating. Not from heat, not from labour, from anticipation. One morning, Hughes doesn't come back from the night shift. No one announces it. There's no shout, no commotion. Just an empty bunk in the corner and a damp lamp still hung on its hook. You notice it when you come in from a morning patrol shift. Your knees aching, your fingers still numb from the cold. You sit down to unlace your boots and glance over to nod at him out of habit, but there's no one there. At first you think he might be on latrine detail or catching a bit of rest in one of the side tunnels, but as the hours drag on and his gear remains untouched, it starts to settle in. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a quiet awareness like watching smoke fade from the end of a spent match. Flanagan doesn't say anything, neither does Doyle. They just shift assignments on the board, wipe away his initials with the side of a thumb, and move the next man up into his place. You ask Turner if he's heard anything. He shakes his head and shrugs. Hughes? Guess he got caught in a bad patch. I thought he was on C-section last night. That's all he offers. You nod like it means something, but it doesn't. Hughes wasn't even 25. You'd split your last cigarette with him 2 days ago. He'd kept it behind his ear, like a badge of luck. You remember him laughing about how he hadn't had a proper smoke since Arras. You don't ask again. You know what's happened, even if you don't know the specifics. The shaft might have collapsed. He might have taken a wrong turn in the dark. He might have lit a charge too early, or too late, or stood too close to someone else who did. It doesn't matter really. The result's the same. No recovery, no grave, no letter sent. If they can't find you, they write missing. And if enough time passes, they stop writing altogether. By noon, someone's already stripped his blanket off the bunk. It's folded and reissued to a man in the next platoon who arrived 2 days ago and still hasn't learned not to step in standing water You catch yourself watching him as he ties off his boots, Hughes's boots now, and you feel something twist behind your ribs. Not anger, not grief, just static. You tell yourself it's better this way, better not to ask, better not to talk. That's how the others manage. Doyle still won't say Connor's name. Harper carries on, like he's never met half the men he works beside. Turner doesn't even make eye contact anymore. Everyone is half present, half buried already. That's the trick, you think. If you pretend they weren't real to begin with, it doesn't hurt when they vanish. You try not to remember what Hughes sounded like. You fail. His voice comes back to you in odd flashes, muttering about home, humming under his breath when he thought no one could hear, coughing like he'd swallowed mud. You hear him in the space he left behind, in the silence where his breathing should be. And that's worse than hearing him scream. The rest of the day unfolds as if nothing happened. The tunnel needs extending, a sump needs clearing, someone's lamp needs re-oiling. You do your tasks with quiet obedience, nodding when spoken to, shifting crates, hauling buckets of spoil. No one brings up the fact that Hughes hasn't returned. No one offers a moment of silence. The only recognition of his absence is the way everyone steps slightly around his old space, as though trying not to trip on a memory. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. The dugout feels different without him. Not quieter, just rearranged. Your head won't stop ticking over the little things. The way he used to roll his sleeves twice and no further. How he scratched behind his left ear when he was thinking. How he always checked his boots for spiders, even though you'd never seen one in the tunnel in your life. You wonder if he knew. If, in that final moment, he realised no one would come. Or if it happened so quickly, he never had the chance to be afraid. You try not to dwell on it. There's no time for grief down here. You can't afford it. Every man that goes missing is a reminder that your name could be next. And when it is, there'll be no trumpet, no list read aloud. Just a space to be filled, a bunk to be swept out, a name to be wiped clean. The next morning, you come in from latrine duty and find a new man sitting on Hughes's bunk. He's young, clean boots, fresh patch sewn on his sleeve. He nods at you like this is all normal, like nothing's happened. He's already started hanging his lamp on the hook, humming under his breath while he tightens the straps on his satchel. You feel the bile rise in your throat, but you swallow it down. It isn't his fault. He didn't choose the bunk. Someone pointed and he followed. Flanagan comes in, glances at the new man, and grunts approval. Good, he says. Need someone who doesn't dawdle in the shaft. Then he moves on. That's the extent of the introduction. No one mentions Hughes. Not that day, not the day after, not ever. You keep working. It happens without warning. No trigger, no sudden collapse, no gas leak or explosion or burst of enemy fire. Just a slow disconnection. Like a wire inside you finally frays and slips free. One moment, you're digging. The next, you're not. Your hands are still wrapped around the handle of your shovel. Your body crouched low in the shaft, but you're no longer part of the movement. You're watching yourself from just behind your own eyes, watching as your grip loosens, as your knees settle deeper into the wet clay, as your breath grows shallow and your gaze goes blank. Doyle notices first. He's been working beside you, muttering under his breath about the slope of the tunnel, how the Germans always tunnel just slightly upward, so the water drains behind them. You've heard this lecture before. It used to annoy you, his endless monologues about dirt and angles and structural load, but now it sounds far away, like someone shouting through a pillow. He calls your name once, then again, sharper this time. You don't respond. You're not ignoring him. You just can't connect the sound to anything meaningful. It doesn't belong to the tunnel. It doesn't belong to the clay. It doesn't belong to you. He waves a hand in front of your face. You blink, but not at him, at nothing. Eventually he curses under his breath and bangs his fist on the wall beside you. You flinch barely, then go still again. You're still breathing, still upright, but nothing moves behind your eyes. Doyle sighs. Then he crawls back through the shaft to fetch help. While you wait, you hear things. Not voices exactly, just shapes in sound. Murmurs that fold in on themselves. Breathing that doesn't match your own. The sound of something skittering just behind your shoulder, even though you know there's no space for anything else in this tunnel. You tilt your head slightly and think you see movement in the lamplight. Something shifting beneath the clay like fingers. You close your eyes. It doesn't help. When help comes, they speak like you're not there. They call your name, shake your arm, slap your cheek once lightly. You feel it, but only vaguely, like pressure through a coat. One of them checks your pupils and mutters something about shell shock, even though there hasn't been a shell within a mile of this shaft. The other says, no, it's just the dark. It gets in their heads. Then they argue about whether it's worth hauling you out or leaving you to sleep it off down here. You don't care which they choose. They decide to drag you. It takes two of them to pull you free. You don't resist. You don't help either. Your limbs are still working technically, but they feel detached, like props someone else is manipulating. Your boots slide along the floorboards, scraping through puddles. Your hands bump against the tunnel walls. At some point, your helmet slips and knocks loose. No one bothers to stop and pick it up. They drag you out slowly, careful not to twist your shoulders in the tighter bends. Doyle follows behind, muttering something about poor ventilation and overwork, as if this can be explained away by air quality. Maybe it can. Or maybe the tunnel has finally decided to collect you. When you reach the surface, the light is too much. It's not even bright, just a thin grey overcast, but it hits your eyes like shrapnel. You squint, blink, look down. Your vision is blurry, the edges soft and indistinct. A hand presses a canteen to your lips. You take a sip and nearly choke. The water tastes like metal and iodine. You cough once, then again. A string of spit trails down your chin. No one wipes it away. Flanagan appears, glances down at you, and nods once. Get him to the med dugout, he says. Then, without waiting for acknowledgement, he turns and walks off. Someone else hauls you to your feet. Your legs don't respond, they drag again. You're placed on a crate just inside the medic's tent. A man with sleeves rolled to the elbow shines a light in your eyes and frowns. Another one, he says. That's the third this week. He takes a clipboard and begins filling in lines. Unit, time of incident, symptoms. You watch the pencil move. You wonder what he's writing, what box he'll check for you. Probably not breakdown. Maybe something softer. Exhaustion? Dehydration? Fatigue? There's a column for next of kin. He skips it. You sit there for hours unmoving until someone else needs the seat. Then you're walked back to the barracks and laid in your bunk. Someone sets a cup of tea beside your bed. You don't drink it. It cools untouched until the next man picks it up and finishes it for you. No one asks what happened in the tunnel. No one wants to know. There's a rhythm here, a machine that keeps moving as long as you don't stop it. If someone breaks, they're replaced. If someone falls apart, they're patched and returned. If someone dies, their name gets crossed off and their boots reassigned. The officers don't want to hear about hallucinations or voices. They don't want to know about hands in the walls or whispers in the clay. They certainly don't want to hear that the tunnel itself feels like it's watching. They want results. Feet in boots, hands on shovels, charges laid, reports written. If you can't manage that, they'll send you somewhere quieter. A hospital behind the lines, a cot in a tent with white sheets, and bright lights, and pills that make the shapes go away. You don't want that. You just want to feel solid again. You lie in your bunk that night without sleeping. You don't dream. You don't even close your eyes. You just stare at the underside of the next bunk and listen to the boards creak. Every so often, someone mutters a name in their sleep, not yours. In the morning you sit up slowly. Your legs still feel like they belong to someone else, but they hold. You pull on your socks, lace your boots, shrug on your coat. No one stops you, no one checks. Doyle sees you in the trench, raises one eyebrow. Back from the dead? You don't answer. You just follow him into the shaft. You make it through the next few weeks in pieces. No one says you're fit, but no one stops you either. The tunnel becomes routine again. Silent, slow, dark. You move like a man already buried, just waiting for the dirt to finish the job. It's June 1917 by the time the order comes down. Messines Ridge. Your company's been preparing for it for months. Though no one ever said the word aloud. It was just referred to as the job, as if calling it anything more might jinx the whole operation. But now it's official. You're to lay the final charges beneath the German lines. 19 mines, each packed with aminal, spaced like teeth under the ridge. The biggest controlled detonation the world's ever seen. The kind of thing, they say, will shift the war. You're not interested in shifting anything anymore. You just want to make it out breathing. The tunnels at Messines are different, deeper, more heavily reinforced. Some were started more than a year ago by men you've never met. Companies rotated out, sent home, or buried before they could see the job finished. The clay is white in some places, blue in others, and wet everywhere. Each shaft twists through layers of damp rock and sticky marl, long corridors that carry your breath ahead of you. The atmosphere is strange, nervous but not frantic. Tense in that brittle way steel gets just before it snaps. Everyone knows the scale of what's coming, but no one wants to say it aloud. The charges have been wired, fuses checked, explosives tamped into place with the care of midwives. You've worked 3 straight shifts on one of the lateral shafts, hauling detonation cable through clay, so thick it fought you every inch of the way. Your knuckles bled, your palms blistered. The cable's still there. There are stories, of course. Rumours that one of the charges flooded, that another collapsed, that the Germans dug close to one shaft but never found it, that their own tunnelling efforts failed. You don't know what's true. You just know that everything is ready and that someone else will decide when it happens. The hours before detonation are the longest of your life. You don't sleep. No one does. You sit in the dugout and drink tea that tastes like cold water, or maybe just blood. The men around you fidget in silence. One tightens and retightens his bootlaces. One mutters numbers under his breath, maybe measuring tunnel lengths, maybe counting the minutes until it's over. Doyle sits across from you with his arms folded and eyes closed. You think he's praying, but when you ask, he says, "I'm trying to forget what we're about to do." When the evacuation order comes, it's quiet. No bugles, no shouting, just a lieutenant in a 2 clean coat stepping down into the dugout and saying, "Pack it up, we're done." You crawl out of the shaft one last time, shoulders hunched from habit, and blink into the grey light of early morning. The surface looks unchanged. That's the strange part. After all the digging, all the bracing and wiring and measuring, the world above you looks like it always has. Muddy, broken, half dead. The trees are still splintered. The air still stinks of smoke and oil. But below the surface, beneath your feet, are nearly 1 million pounds of explosives, nestled in chambers you helped shape with your own blistered hands. You lie down in the grass just beyond the blast zone. It's damp, cold. Doesn't matter. Your coat is soaked anyway. Around you, dozens of other sappers stretch out along the slope, boots splayed, helmets tilted back, all eyes fixed on the horizon. Someone lights a cigarette. Someone else offers you one. You take it not because you want it, but because it feels wrong not to. You wait. Birds sing. That's the worst part. Somewhere in the distance, a lark flutters overhead, singing like it doesn't know the ridge is about to disappear. You close your eyes. You try not to think about the Germans above the charges. Thousands of them, dug in along the high ground, probably cleaning rifles or brewing coffee. They don't know. Not yet. Not until the fuse burns down. The first blast doesn't sound like a bomb. It sounds like the sky being torn open. A great heaving roar that builds from underneath. A wave of sound that pushes through your chest and rattles your teeth. The ground lifts, not shakes, lifts. You feel the soil rise an inch under your back, then fall again. A moment later, the air cracks apart as a second mine goes, then a third, then more in staggered rhythm, rolling across the ridge like thunder climbing a staircase. You sit up and watch as Messines Ridge explodes from the inside out. The horizon vanishes behind clouds of dirt and smoke. Chunks of earth the size of carts rain down in the distance. The sound keeps coming, rolling over you like surf, wave after wave. One detonation fails to go off. You count 18 instead of 19, but no one around you seems to notice or care. Later they'll say it was the loudest man-made sound in history at the time, that it was heard in Dublin, that 10,000 German soldiers died instantly, many never found, that the ridge changed hands in a day, that it was a turning point. But for now, it's just a noise you can't forget. When it ends, the silence is worse. It stretches out hollow and enormous. No cheering, no orders, just stunned breathing and the soft sound of debris settling into new craters. You lie back again. Let your head rest against a patch of flattened grass. Your ears are still ringing. Your hands are still trembling. Your boots are soaked through. You close your eyes and try to pretend you weren't part of it, that you didn't help dig the graves for thousands of men you'll never see. Men whose only crime was standing on the wrong patch of earth when someone pressed a button. There are no medals for this, no parades, no flags. The infantry will take the ridge. The generals will sign their reports. The press will call it brilliant. But no one will mention the diggers. No one will say your name. They never do. You survived Messines. And then somehow, life keeps going. There are still tunnels to dig, lines to push, more charges to lay, though none so grand. The next few weeks blur. Routine work mostly. Reinforcements arrive. The weather turns. A few shafts collapse. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth remembering. Then one morning, you don't report back. There's no alarm raised, no urgent scramble. The shift change is messy anyway, and Flanagan assumes you're already below. Doyle says he thought he saw you go in ahead of him, but doesn't swear to it. Harper shrugs and says, probably transferred. You've missed roll call before. Men lose track of time out here all the time. No one panics after an hour, or 3. By evening your bunk is still empty. Your lamp hangs cold on its hook. Your boots are gone. That's the first thing someone notices. The boots. Not your name, not your absence. Just the gap beneath the cot where the soles used to rest, still caked with blue clay, from the support shaft west of Spanbrook Molen. Someone mutters that maybe you left early to beat the queue to supper, but the cook didn't see you either. They checked the latrines, the outer trench lines, the aid station, nothing. No one saw you go. No one remembers seeing you come back. No accident was reported. No blast occurred. No scream. No trail of blood. You are not beneath a collapsed tunnel. You are not in the ledger at the medical tent. You are simply missing. Someone finally tells Flanagan the next morning. He doesn't say much, just glances at your bunk, grunts and makes a mark on his clipboard. No patrol is sent, no search, just a quiet acknowledgement that one man has fallen out of the line. It happens, especially to tunnellers. You're close to the ground already. One bad moment, one wrong turn, and the earth swallows you whole. Sometimes they turn up 3 shifts later, filthy and disoriented, crawling out from a shaft no one remembered was still in use. Other times, they don't turn up at all. After 3 days, you're assumed not to be returning. Your things are divided. The coat goes to a new recruit from Leicestershire who lost his in a fire near the mess tent. Your razor is claimed by Doyle, who snaps off the bent teeth and mutters something about fixing it. The spare tin of tobacco disappears from your footlocker. The socks are taken without a word. Your lamp is cleaned, re-oiled, and clipped to the belt of a man who never knew your name. No one writes home. No one files an inquiry. Someone updates the assignment board. Your name is smudged out with a charcoal thumb. A replacement is penciled in below. the ledger at headquarters takes longer to catch up. You'll be listed as absent for 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then the clerks will move you to unaccounted. If no one objects and no paperwork arrives to contradict it, they'll eventually mark you as presumed dead. No ceremony, no service, just a new column on a spreadsheet, and a footnote that your body was never recovered. That's not unusual either. You are not buried, you are not commemorated, there is no grave. If someone in the rear tries to track you, an overworked sergeant maybe, or an officer with a moment of guilt, they'll find your name listed on a duty roster from 3 weeks ago. Nothing after, no confirmation of death, no confirmed sighting. A blank. The war is full of blanks. They will close the file. Back at the front, your bunk is filled by a man named Ellis. He ties his boots differently than you did, snores louder, complains more, but he fits in quickly. He digs well, stays quiet. He doesn't ask about the man who used to sleep where he does now. No one tells him, not because it's a secret, just because it's not important. There are other tunnels to dig, other charges to lay. The front moves forward inch by inch, and every inch demands another body. Whether yours is under the mud or lost somewhere beyond, it doesn't change the tally. You're not mourned, you're absorbed, you're replaced, and the work continues. That brings us to the end of tonight's story, a descent through clay and silence, through the forgotten shafts and buried fears of a war waged in the dark. You weren't a hero, you weren't even a name, just a man with calloused hands and a lamp that never got turned back in, folded into the dirt beneath a front that moved on without you. If you'd like early access to more of these slow journeys through history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers Andrew S., Amanda Lamke, and Rich Davis. Sleep well.